Today's story uncovers the chilling saga of Amelia Dyer, the infamous Ogress of Reading. As one of Victorian England's most notorious serial killers, her dark legacy of preying on the innocent shocks to this day. In the annals of true crime history, few figures are as chillingly notorious as Amelia Dyer. Dubbed the Ogress of Reading, her name is synonymous with one of the darkest chapters of Victorian England. This era, marked by its stringent social norms and contrasting underbelly of poverty and desperation, serves as the backdrop to Dyer's heinous crimes. Amelia Dyer's story is not just one of murder and deception, it is a tale that exposes the grim realities of a society grappling with rapid industrialization and social inequality. Her crimes, which targeted the most vulnerable and voiceless newborn infants, reveal the harrowing depths of human depravity under the guise of caretaking. As we delve into the life of Amelia Dyer, we embark on a journey through Victorian England's shadowy corners, exploring how a seemingly ordinary woman transformed into one of history's most infamous baby farmers and serial killers. This account aims to provide an unflinching look at her life and crimes, maintaining a factual and neutral perspective throughout. Amelia Dyer was born Amelia Elizabeth Hobley in 1837 in the small village of Pile Marsh, just east of Bristol. The daughter of a shoemaker, she grew up in a working-class household that, while not destitute, knew the meaning of hardship. Amelia's childhood was marred by tragedy. Her mother suffered from severe mental illness, which profoundly impacted Amelia and her siblings. Educationally, Amelia showed promise. She was able to read and write, a significant achievement for a working-class girl in that era. Her intelligence and determination suggested a bright future, but her aspirations were cut short by the responsibilities thrust upon her at a young age, particularly after her mother's mental health deteriorated. In her early 20s, Amelia trained as a nurse and midwife, a profession that brought her into contact with young mothers and newborns. It was during this time that she married George Thomas, a man significantly older than her. This marriage, while seemingly ordinary, would later be scrutinized for its potential influence on her descent into criminality. The early years of her marriage were unremarkable, marked by the everyday struggles of Victorian working-class life. However, the seeds of her future crimes were unwittingly sown as she grappled with financial instability and the pressures of societal expectations. Amelia's transition from a nurse to a baby farmer was not instantaneous, but a gradual descent fueled by opportunity, desperation, and a troubling lack of empathy. The practice of baby farming in Victorian England was a grim reflection of the era's social and economic disparities. It emerged as a solution for unmarried mothers and impoverished families who could not afford to care for their offspring. Baby farmers, like Amelia Dyer, presented themselves as a refuge for these desperate individuals, promising care and a better life for their children in exchange for a fee. Amelia's entry into the world of baby farming was a calculated transition from her nursing career. By the 1860s, she realized the financial gains that could be made from adopting infants under the pretense of providing them with a better life. Her operations began innocuously enough, with her appearing as a compassionate figure to those in dire need. However, the reality of her business was far from the benevolent facade she presented. In the beginning, Amelia took in infants, providing minimal care while collecting fees from their mothers. Her house in Bristol became a haven for desperate young women who saw no other option. This period marked the start of her descent into criminality, as neglect often led to the deaths of many of these children. Over time, Amelia's methods grew increasingly sinister. The initial neglect that characterized her early baby farming days evolved into something far more malevolent. She began actively plotting the demise of the infants in her care, viewing them not as human beings but as sources of income. The mortality rate among the children she took in skyrocketed. Suspicion arose, but in a time when infant mortality was already high, her activities went largely unquestioned for years. It was a period marked by her growing coldness and detachment from the suffering of the innocent lives she was supposed to protect. Amelia's operations were shrouded in secrecy. She moved frequently, changing her name and location to avoid detection and to continue her business undisturbed. Her advertisements in local newspapers, which promised a safe and loving home for children, attracted more unsuspecting mothers. These ads were carefully worded, designed to appeal to the most desperate, often single, mothers who saw no other viable option for their newborns. The financial transactions were simple yet tragically final. Parents paid a one-time fee, a sum that was significant for the time, believing their children were entering a better life. In reality, they were unknowingly sentencing their infants to a grim fate at the hands of Dyer. What made Amelia Dyer particularly dangerous was her ability to maintain the facade of a caring nurse and mother figure. To the outside world, she appeared as a respectable woman, someone who could be trusted with the care of children. This deception was crucial to her operations, allowing her to continue her crimes unchecked for many years. Her descent into becoming an active murderer of infants was gradual but steady. The shift from neglect to murder was not just a result of her growing greed, but also an alarming lack of empathy and moral compass. Dyer viewed the infants not as individuals, but as commodities, and their deaths as merely a means to an end. Amelia Dyer's descent into becoming one of the most notorious serial killers in Victorian England was marked by a chilling transformation in her methods. Initially, the deaths of infants in her care were a byproduct of neglect and poor living conditions. However, as time passed, these deaths became deliberate acts of murder. Dyer's method of killing was cold and calculated. She would strangle her young victims with white dressmaker's tape, later chillingly stating that she used white tape because it was good enough. This method of murder was not only a demonstration of her callousness, but also her disturbing attention to detail and planning. The bodies of these infants were disposed of in various ways, often callously discarded. Some were thrown into the Thames River, while others were buried or hidden in different locations. Dyer's complete disregard for the sanctity of life was evident in her disposal methods, treating these infants as mere refuse. As her criminal activities escalated, so too did the suspicion around her. The authorities began to notice the alarming number of infant deaths linked to her care. However, Dyer was cunning and evasive, frequently changing her name and address to avoid detection. Her mobility and the general lack of coordination in law enforcement at the time made it challenging to track her movements and activities. The turning point in the investigation came with a significant discovery. In March 1896, a package was retrieved from the Thames River near Reading, containing the body of a baby girl. The police traced the package back to Dyer due to a label from the local druggist, which she had carelessly left on the paper wrapping. This discovery was the first concrete piece of evidence linking her to the crimes. Further investigation revealed a horrifying pattern. Many infants had been entrusted to Dyer's care, only to disappear mysteriously. The police, now with a solid lead, were able to connect Dyer to numerous other cases of missing infants. The extent of her crimes began to unravel, painting a grim picture of a serial killer who had operated undetected for years. Dyer's arrest and subsequent search of her property revealed more damning evidence. Receipts for advertisements, pawn tickets for children's clothing, and letters from mothers inquiring about their children were found, adding to the mounting evidence against her. The authorities realized the scale of Dyer's operation and the number of lives she had callously ended. Her motivations for these heinous acts were complex and multifaceted. Financial gain was undoubtedly a significant factor, as each child brought a fee from the desperate mother. However, it went beyond mere monetary incentive. Dyer's actions displayed a deep-seated disregard for human life, particularly the lives of the helpless and innocent. Psychologists and criminologists have since speculated that her upbringing, marked by the presence of mental illness in her family and the responsibility she shouldered from a young age, may have played a role in her psychological development. Yet, these factors do not excuse her actions, but rather offer a context to understand the depths of her depravity. The public and legal response to these revelations was one of shock and horror. Victorian society, despite its many shortcomings, held certain moral standards, and the murder of innocent children was anathema to these values. Dyer had not only broken the law but had also violated a fundamental societal taboo, causing widespread revulsion and anger. Amelia Dyer's crimes exposed a darker side of Victorian society, one where individuals like her could exploit the vulnerabilities of the less fortunate. Her case highlighted the desperate situation of many single mothers and the lack of social support systems, which indirectly contributed to the horrors she perpetrated. The unraveling of Amelia Dyer's heinous crimes began with the discovery of a child's body in the Thames River in 1896. This pivotal moment led to a series of investigations that would eventually bring her to justice. When the police traced the package back to Dyer, they employed a strategy to catch her red-handed. They arranged a sting operation, where an undercover officer posed as a potential client looking to give up a child for adoption. Dyer, unsuspecting of the ruse, agreed to meet. On April 3, 1896, police arrested her at her home in Reading. Following this meeting, the search of Dyer's residence unearthed a house of horrors. Though no bodies were found on the property, the evidence of her crimes was overwhelming. Receipts for advertisements, telegrams from mothers, articles of children's clothing, and pawn tickets all pointed to a large-scale operation. The most damning piece of evidence was the white tape she used to strangle her victims, which was found in her possession. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the community and the nation. The police faced the daunting task of unraveling the extent of her crimes. They sifted through years of records, trying to trace the fates of numerous children who had passed through her hands. The investigation revealed a trail of deceit, death, and destruction that spanned several years and involved a significant number of victims, though the exact count remains unknown. During interrogation, Dyer remained largely uncooperative, offering little information about her crimes. However, the evidence against her was irrefutable. She was charged with murder, and her trial was set to be a significant event, drawing considerable public and media attention. The trial of Amelia Dyer was a landmark event in Victorian England. Held in May 1896, it brought to light the gruesome nature of her crimes and the failure of society to protect its most vulnerable members. The evidence presented at the trial was overwhelming. Witnesses, including mothers who had given their children to Dyer, testified to her deceit and the conditions under which she accepted these infants. The prosecution painted a picture of a cold and calculating murderer who preyed on the desperation of young mothers. The most compelling evidence was the white tape used to strangle her victims, which became a symbol of her cruel methods. Dyer's defense hinged on a plea of insanity, a common strategy in that era, especially given her family history of mental illness. However, the jury was unconvinced. The deliberation was brief, and she was found guilty of murder. Her sentence was death by hanging, a verdict that reflected the severity of her crimes and the public outrage surrounding the case. The trial of Amelia Dyer did more than just bring a murderer to justice. It cast a spotlight on the practice of baby farming. It exposed the vulnerabilities in the system that allowed individuals like Dyer to exploit desperate mothers and their children. The public reaction was one of horror and disgust, not only at the nature of her crimes but at the societal conditions that had enabled them. The media coverage of the trial was extensive, and Dyer's case became a cause célèbre. Newspapers across the country reported on the details of the trial and her crimes, often with a sensationalist tone. This coverage played a significant role in shaping public opinion and raising awareness about the darker aspects of Victorian society. The trial also sparked a debate about the role of the government in protecting children and supporting single mothers. In the wake of the trial, there were calls for reform, including better regulation of adoption practices and more support for unmarried mothers. Dyer's case served as a catalyst for change, highlighting the need for greater societal responsibility towards the welfare of children. The case of Amelia Dyer has long fascinated psychologists and criminologists, who have attempted to understand the mindset and motivations behind her heinous acts. Dyer's crimes were not only shocking in their brutality but also in their apparent lack of remorse or empathy. Psychological analyses suggest that Dyer may have exhibited traits consistent with psychopathy, including a lack of empathy, remorselessness, and a manipulative nature. Her ability to present herself as a caring nurse while secretly murdering infants indicates a significant disconnection from societal norms and moral codes. Historical accounts of Dyer's life indicate potential early signs of mental instability. Her mother's mental illness and the responsibility Dyer faced at a young age might have played a role in her psychological development. However, these factors do not excuse her actions. They provide context for her disturbing behavior. Some experts have suggested that Dyer's actions could be partially attributed to the societal pressures of Victorian England. The stigma surrounding illegitimate children and the limited options for unmarried mothers may have contributed to her rationale for committing these crimes. However, this does not mitigate the fact that her actions were calculated and cruel. The psychological analysis of Amelia Dyer offers a glimpse into the mind of a serial killer and the factors that can drive an individual to commit such monstrous acts. Her case remains a crucial study in the fields of psychology and criminology, contributing to our understanding of criminal behavior. The legacy of Amelia Dyer extends far beyond the immediate horror of her crimes. Her case had a profound impact on Victorian society and brought about significant changes in the way children's welfare was handled. One of the most direct impacts of Dyer's case was the increased scrutiny and eventual regulation of the baby farming industry. Her crimes highlighted the lack of oversight and the ease with which individuals could exploit the system for nefarious purposes. In response, the government introduced stricter adoption laws and more rigorous monitoring of child welfare. Moreover, Dyer's case raised public awareness about the plight of unmarried mothers and their children. It exposed the desperate circumstances that forced many women to turn to baby farmers. This awareness led to a gradual shift in societal attitudes and more support for vulnerable mothers and their children. The infamy of Amelia Dyer also left an indelible mark on cultural memory. Her story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and discussions, serving as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity. Her case continues to intrigue and horrify people, maintaining a place in the annals of true crime history. Additionally, Dyer's crimes prompted a reevaluation of the role of women in society. The fact that a woman, traditionally seen as a nurturer and caregiver, could commit such heinous acts challenged the Victorian ideals of femininity and motherhood. This led to broader discussions about women's mental health and their roles both within the family and in society at large. The legacy of Amelia Dyer is a complex one. While she remains a notorious figure in criminal history, her case also serves as a catalyst for positive change. It underscores the importance of societal responsibility in protecting the most vulnerable and the need for continual vigilance to prevent such tragedies from occurring again. In conclusion, the life and crimes of Amelia Dyer paint a disturbing portrait of one of history's most infamous baby farmers and serial killers. Her story is not just one of individual depravity but also a reflection of the societal flaws of Victorian England. Dyer's case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of safeguarding the welfare of children and supporting those in vulnerable positions. While her crimes are a dark chapter in history, they have also been instrumental in bringing about necessary changes in social and legal practices. As we reflect on Amelia Dyer's life, we are reminded of the capacity for evil that exists within humanity, but also of our collective responsibility to prevent such atrocities. Her story, though rooted in the past, continues to resonate and serve as a cautionary tale for future generations. The life and crimes of Amelia Dyer will forever be etched in the annals of true crime, a testament to the complexities of human nature and the consequences of societal neglect.